Welcome to my experience on a childhood game show. Kind of. So a few videos back, I ended up wearing this shirt, and like a bunch of you were like, oh my god, I remember that show. And by a bunch of you, I mean, it was like 5 of you. But that's okay, because I'm here to educate the masses. So was a game show for children, and it was prime Canadian television. It ran from 1997 to 2003, and basically had kids performing a series of tasks from trivia to some gross stuff.
It doesn't taste that bad, does it?
And if you messed up, you got sent to the Punisher.
Oh. You wanna talk rotten? Oh, Punisher! Punisher! Control! Punisher! Control! One is enough. Not three.
Again, the late 90s, early 2000s were wild. So the main show was comprised of a blue, green, and red team that were made up of schools from around Ontario. But there was a halftime show where they had to vote for a purple team, an orange team, or a yellow team. And I'm sure based on the lighting, this looks more orange. It's a mustardy yellow. I can assure you it is yellow. Now the halftime shows were a series of obstacle courses that were conducted with the traveling portion of the show, which was called the Slime Tour. They went all around Canada to a bunch of different schools, and I was one of those kids. Kinda. But we'll get to that. Before we talk about the specifics of me, let's just tell you a little bit more about the show, because it was kind of wild. So it aired on YTV, which in combination with Teletoon and the Family Channel made the trifecta of Canadian adolescent television. Though while tracking down the episode I actually needed, I noticed that it aired on Discovery Kids a bunch, which I have some questions about, but I'm sure there's no one around for me to ask, so we'll just keep going. And it was hosted by this snazzy man named Wink Yahoo, a total baller with fancy-ass suits.
Hey, there's something to be said about a great suit on a great guy.
He also did an AMA on Reddit about 7 years ago where he said the pay was actually pretty bitchin', so like, good job, Wink. Proud of you. Then there were a variety of other people involved. Obviously, there was the different people that went on the Slime Tour, but in the main show, there was Quizmaster Patricia, Aaron, and Sam. But now as an adult, I kind of gotta wonder how they felt about doing this job. Like, the Punisher is doing fine. That's a great job. And there was 2 different Punishers over the course of the series, and both of those guys clearly had a great time. Like, you just can't get away with shit like this nowadays.
Jermaine. Nolan. Samantha. Oh my God. Oh, Amanda. You saw how easy it was with the yapperin'?
Like, can you imagine in 2020 having a guy that kind of looks a little bit like a hockey player, a little bit like someone involved in the BDSM lifestyle, and a little bit like Jason from Friday the 13th, grabbing a kid by the throat and dragging them to a tank to dump slime on top of them? I can't. The transition into the new millennium was just... And Quizmaster Patricia got to keep it pretty chill, and I guess people still recognize her based on an interview she's recently given. But Sam and Aaron are in the splash zone, and I feel like these people wanted to be actors, maybe on things a little bit different than a game show intended for children, but instead they got to explain weird challenges to middle school students. Like, I'd do it in a heartbeat because I have no standards.
You did a good job, but there's still too much on this plate to give you any points, so 0 points, Wink. Sorry, babe.
Nah, screw that. This job rocks. They loved it. So the show itself was broken into 3 rounds. The first and the third round had one player from each team spinning a giant wheel, which had a variety of activities, rewards, and punishments on it. The teammate who spun would have to do any of like the quiz-based stuff, and the person not spinning had to do the challenges or face the punishments. There was the dump, which was a game where you would drop a ball in a pinball-like maze thing, and it could give you points, take away points, or give points to another team. This area also had the speed round, which gave you 20 seconds to answer 10 questions, and you got 5 points per each correct question. These would kind of try to like flip you up with like tongue twisters.
What's 5 plus 5?
10.
What's 8 plus 2?
10.
How many fingers do you have?
8.
Name a vegetable.
Win and spin, lose and spin, which are pretty self-explanatory, but then they had trade and spin, which was the cause for much debate because someone could be a complete stupid turnip the entire game and then flip it all in a second just by landing on trade and spin. But on the other hand, if you were winning and it was getting close to the end of the game and you had to trade and the other person had less points than you, that sucked. Mayhem was random messy challenges. Sometimes you'd be bobbing for weird items out of slime liquid. Sometimes you'd have to eat something gross. Also, a lot of these things involved getting the audience members soaked with a bunch of slime or covered in gross things. So it was a really very inclusive game. And then the big dog. This involved answering a trivia question. If you got it right, you got 50 points. But if you got it wrong...
Punisher.
Yeah, someone feels like a caged animal now.
Oh, please,
The wheels in both of these rounds essentially had all the same options. They just looked different. But in the second season, they actually swapped one of the regular Uh-Oh tiles for Uh-Oh Deluxe, which is basically you get the question right, you get 75 points. But if you get it wrong, your teammate gets slimed twice, with the second bucket being loaded with glitter slime, which should honestly just constitute as torture. And also sometimes the Punisher would just dump things on people even if their teammate got the question right because he'd feel a little bored and left out. He'd also just throw things on the spectators too, just for fun. You know, it's good times. In season 5, it turned into a picket slot, which means you could pick anything you wanted, including Uh-Oh Deluxe. And in the last season, it just got turned into a Gushers tile, which just gave you points. Because sponsors! Speaking of sponsors, I don't have any because the ones that keep hitting me up are the ones that everybody makes fun of, so never mind. And of course, in between these rounds was the slime tour. So this show was super popular when I was in elementary and middle school. It combined all the things that kids love. Giant spinning wheels, gross challenges, prizes, and watching your peers get covered in disgusting liquid slime. The theme song was also awesome.
You wanna ride to a place that's live where the music is pumping to make you vibe with it's always something new around the corner. Gonna play a little up.
The prizes themselves were either really cool or a little bit weird. Like you get a CD player or a color printer or a Bop It or a Timex watch. But the montage they showed them all off in was always cool. Like, look at this 90s trash. I love it. I want an outfit that looks exactly like this. So for the slime tour, the show went around to a variety of different schools all across Canada. And the show essentially asked teachers from every class and every grade to pick 2 students, 1 boy, 1 girl who they thought were the most outgoing in their class. Or the biggest idiots. I don't know. I feel like either way, this was setting people up to be emotionally crushed inside. But it doesn't matter because I was selected. So at this point, we had to come up with our stage names. And these would be things like Awesome Andy, Killer Kyle, Rockin' Rachel. So you'd pick one of these, and then you'd have to do your intro in front of the entire school. I'm ass-kicking Amanda, and I'm here to kill you. Or, you know, something like not quite as violent, but it was something like that. So they essentially just had you run out acting like an idiot, you say your stage name, and then some kind of threat and how you're gonna beat everyone around you. And then you act like a complete idiot just to show that you really want to be on the show that badly and that you'll bring a lot of energy when they're actually filming. Then they get the entire school to judge you based on cheer levels. Again, lots of potential for emotional crushing here. But I'm here telling the story, so even though I was younger than a lot of the other contestants, I still made it through. And I remember I had to do it like a couple times. Like they had to do one round where they weeded out a bunch of people. I think I had to do it about 3 times before it got down to like the last group of people that were actually gonna go on to the show. So you might be wondering where my episode is. Well, it never aired. What I'm saying is that I was actually a selected reject or a rejected selection. Basically, I got picked, but when it actually went up to the sign-up point, they were like, hey, you're actually too young to do this, but we'll keep you around as one of the backups in case something goes horribly wrong with one of the intended episodes. Spoiler alert, nothing went wrong with any of the intended episodes, so the only footage of me actually on the show is jumping around in the background like an idiot. Basically, what I've learned from the early 2000s in Canada is that Gap hoodies and tan pants were super popular. But it doesn't matter because I still got to see the prize truck and pick this awesome clean shirt. So one of the claims to fame that this town that I used to live in had was something called the magnetic hill, which is basically some kind of illusion effect where it seems like your car is being pulled up a hill even though you're not doing anything. So obviously that was an area they wanted to film, and it happened to be right next to a zoo. So they filmed it at a zoo. And for some reason that I now can't figure out, because I'm sure there are a lot of available bathrooms at a zoo, our changing room was actually in behind the otter enclosure. So like there's the otter tank where they can swim, and then the big house where they would like feed them and check like the water levels and the cleanliness and stuff where the otters could go in and get fed. That's where they had everyone changing. On the one hand, it was cool. You kind of got to see behind the scenes at the zoo, but on the other hand, it kind of smelled bad. And it was wet. Really showing you guys the behind the scenes glamour of game shows here today. So really all I did in here was change into this shirt so I could walk around feeling like a badass, because like anybody else who was just kind of one of the backups waiting for their turn to just do something, we were like, oh yeah, that could have been one of us. Also, for some reason I asked for a medium, even though I wasn't a large child at all. Like I was tall for my age, but probably still not tall enough to need a medium shirt. Like it worked out because I can still wear it now, but I somehow feel like I could have fit into a small as well. I don't know. It worked out. It's fine. But this crazy Cory guy ended up being in YTV commercials for years. And it's permanently burned into my skull with the calm down crazy Cory. And I also remember him being super popular in school, at least by like my child's standards. He was about 4 years older than me, but I still remember we were all rooting for him. I don't remember either of these other two, which is fine because I'm sure that they never had any idea that I ever existed and still don't. So it's fun. It works out. So he's always had like a few different challenge components, but there was usually always like the eating part, which just sucked. And according to Wink, at least on the main show, sometimes this food stuff was prepared like 2 days in advance. So it would just get pretty smelly. Like sometimes you'd luck out and it would just be mashed potatoes mixed with food coloring. Sometimes it would be Spam mixed with bananas, which I would not have been able to do because, especially as a kid, a lot of things mentally gross me out. Like, I'm surprised there was not more puking on Uh-Oh, or they were just really good at covering it up. I know a lot of people puked after because you eat a bunch of disgusting food, then you have to keep running. Yeah. But I was so stoked on my mild inclusion on this show that summer, I had an Uh-Oh themed birthday party. I had an Uh-Oh themed cake, and because my parents were so awesome, they actually set up an obstacle course for me and all my friends to go through. But at the same time, they kind of suck because they created something that I would never have been able to win. So for the gross out food challenge, they were like, oh, worms and dirt. You have to eat worms and dirt, where they crushed up Oreos and put gummy worms inside it. I hate both of those things. And like as a child, like I said, mentally things gross me out way more. So like worms and dirt and 2 food items I despise was just not a good time. Like everyone else is all like, ooh, this is good. And I was like, why? You're supposed to give me an advantage. It's my birthday party. But yeah, that does it with my kind of personal experience being on a child game show. Uh-Oh is just something that like defined an entire generation of Canadian children, and it was just really cool to even somewhat be a part of it. If you were actually on the show, feel free to let me know down below. I'd love to hear some of your stories either from like the main show, or even if you were part of one of these like slime tour episodes that actually aired, so making you cooler than me. I would also love to hear about your stories. I'd also just like to hear if Uh-Oh was something you loved watching, or if you were in the States and maybe it played somewheres that I'm unaware of, but probably not. Y'all just missed out on this. That's pretty much gonna do it. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe if you're new and you're into that kind of thing. It does really help the channel. I'm getting pretty close to 100,000 subscribers, which is pretty much all I want. Thank you as always to my Patreon supporters. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all later.
Spin the wheel, spin around the hammer. Spin that wheel, say once again.